Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's event. Hopefully, everybody is connected and can hear me okay. My name is Mihal. I'll be moderating the webinar today and looking after everybody. Joining me on the call today is Jonathan Weisglass, who's our education manager here at BrightWork. Jonathan, can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfectly.
Excellent, and I can hear you, so we've gotten over the first hump. So Jonathan's been working closely with our customers for a couple of years. Some of you may be familiar with them. And today he's going to talk us through mastering project task management. And we're going to look at that through Microsoft 365, but also through the lens of our product, BrightWork 365 too, which again, some of you may be familiar with if you're customers, but we'll give you an overview of that too today. So we have loads to get through. Just before we dive in, I have a couple of housekeeping items. We are assuming and we're hoping that you have lots of questions today. If you do have a question, please add it to the questions panel and go to webinar, which for me is on the right-hand side of my screen. So you may need to just expand it out with a little arrow. If you want to try it out and say hello, be our guest. Once we have kind of gone through whatever slides we're going to show and whatever little demonstration we have, we'll answer as many questions as we can within the time. And if we don't get to your question, we'll also give you some contact details as well for after the webinar, if you think of something later. Secondly, this webinar is being recorded, so don't worry too much about taking any notes. You will receive an email tomorrow from our colleague Adam, actually, with a link to the recording, and we'll also give you any slides that we use today, so please keep an eye out for that. So for now, I think that we might just kind of dive straight in because we have a good bit to go through. So Jonathan, I might actually hand over to you for now. Is that what we've got next? Yeah. And then I can jump in with help with any polls or any interactions, and I'll be there for the questions at the end if that's okay with you.
Sounds great, Mihal. Thanks for that intro. So let's dive in. Welcome everybody. Very happy you're here. You're able to join us today. Let's just take a quick look at the agenda. So as Mihal said, the topic's going to be mastering project task management with Microsoft 365. We're going to be doing it using the BrightWork 365 product, which sits within Microsoft 365, and we'll get into the details later. So we'll be first looking at an overview of the product beyond task management. That'll be relatively quick, just so you get a sense of the entire playing field of BrightWork 365. Then we'll get into project task management fundamentals, a little process, and of course some live demo as well for that. We'll talk about building the task list and timelines, and we'll look at the Gantt chart that's built into the product. We'll look at other actions, so other work elements that spring from project tasks. So actions and risks and issues and how these kind of all interplay and one leads to the other. And then we'll get into some live Q&A, back to Mihal at the live Q&A stage, and we'll answer some questions. First off, temporarily back to Mihal, just for if you have a quick poll, Mihal, do you have any?
Yeah, let's just get a sense of who we have on the call. So I just want to know, are you guys using Microsoft 365 for project management? So nice and simple. We'll just get that kind of out of the way. It gives us a sense of who we're talking to. So it's a pretty wide mix actually coming through. We have about 20% of people saying yes all the time. And the majority, about 40 or 50% of people are kind of saying sometimes, but they mainly just use Office apps. So I think you're in the right place. This is kind of, we'll talk a little bit how you can elevate your task management by using Microsoft 365. So I'm just going to let that run for 5 more seconds, guys. But thank you all for voting. That's great, folks. Thanks a million.
Okay, back to me. Appreciate it. So real quick, what is BrightWork 365, the company, as well as the product, just briefly. So BrightWork, the company, has over 25 years of experience in the project management realm, across several products, one of which, of course, is BrightWork 365. And it's not just the technology, not just the product, the app. It's services and support as well. So we have a team of people who our customers meet with, talk about process and process improvement, as well as the technology. Of course, we're squeezing as much as we can out of your Microsoft 365 subscription. So this product, it plays well, and it's built in to play well with Microsoft Teams. There's SharePoint Online aspects to it, making use of your Active Directory, as well as the Office apps that you see there. Word, Excel, OneNote, Outlook, etc. And the product, BrightWork 365, also squeezes as much as we can out of the Microsoft Power Platform. So we are a Power app. We utilize Power BI if that's something that your organization subscribes to. That's for some additional reports. There's a lot of automation going on, notifications going out automatically, various workflows being triggered, all built in. And the data, this is important, is all stored within your, it's stored within your Microsoft Dataverse. So the data is within your tenant. So I alluded to this earlier, that it's not just about the product, it's also about the teamwork and the relationships that you build with our customer success team. They and you will take a start evolve approach to implementing project management made easy using BrightWork 365. You start quickly. We have templates, out of the box starter templates to get you going quickly, but we do expect that those will evolve over time. And sort of through customization, through process improvements. It's not a static product by any means. Let's get into the demo now, live app. Okay, so before we get into task management, just real quick, just like again, so you get a lay of the land here. This is the home screen of BrightWork 365, and you can see that it starts off with some important metrics about what's going on throughout the entire system, so you don't have to dig deep to see from a statistics or metrics perspective what's going on. You've got we have a request module, so these are stats all about the requests that are ongoing, those that have already been approved. The request module, you can see a link over here on the left. As far as the projects themselves that got created from requests, again, important metrics all about them. You can see in this particular demo system, we have 12 that are in progress. There are 1 that I'm personally assigned to, and you have a few projects that are not started yet. And from a portfolio perspective, which we're including programs in that, so portfolio being the sort of the mother of all in terms of a hierarchy, we have 1 main portfolio that everything falls underneath, and 5 programs that fall under that 1 portfolio. And within those programs, there are many different projects. Various dashboards, I'll just quickly show you just a little glimpse of that. So we have Power Apps dashboards, and it's all that you see here, plus variations of dashboards. These are all included regardless of whether you have a separate Power BI subscription with Microsoft. But if you do happen to have a Power BI subscription, again, with Microsoft directly, we do have Power BI reports included as well. They're included for everybody. You just would need that Microsoft license to avail yourself of these 4 separate ones here. We have a request module. Again, this is where people in your organization can submit requests for new projects. They give some details about what they included. You guys can approve them or decline them or defer them. There's a whole process behind that. Not for today, however. We'll come to this project section in just a bit. Just wanted to show you, I mentioned the portfolios, right? So we have this 1 portfolio. You could have more than 1 portfolio if you want. In this example, we just happen to be showing 1. Underneath that 1, we have multiple programs. So let me just show you that. But actually, if I click into the portfolio, you'll see the programs underneath over here. I could also just click into the program section here and you'll see them. And then underneath these programs, if I were to click further, it would just be one additional way for us to get into the projects that belong to that program. In addition, just to let you know, we also have a templates area at the bottom. I won't click into it for time reasons, but that's where you can get your hands on the starter templates that we include as part of the product, as well as an admin area where you can do administrative type things. Let's go into the projects area now to start talking more about projects and task management. So this is a list of all the projects that are under this particular view. I can switch the view to just show projects that were completed or only those that are in progress. This happens to show all projects regardless of their status. I'm going to go into this guy over here called Widget Blue Product. Now, even before I click into it, you can see we've got important information, sort of bubbling up to this view about that particular project, but let's click into it. I will, of course, get into that Gantt chart in just a little bit, but let's just take a really brief tour through a typical project here in BrightWork 365. So it has all the elements you would expect. It has a charter, as do all of the other projects, with this important information that's at a high level about the project. All of this, we include all of this out of the box. You can hide fields if you need to. You can add additional fields that are important for you. So it is very malleable, but this is what a typical charter page would look like. We have status. This is where you would set the current status of the project. The project manager will come here and change things as needed. We have status reports, which is where you would get sort of a snapshot. So it's a snapshot of whatever was in the status screen at the time that the project manager decided to create that snapshot. Again, probably a webinar all on its own, but just real briefly, let's just look into one of those snapshots over here. And let's go back. We have a team that's just it lists out all the people who have been assigned tasks or work within your project. I'll come back to stages and Gantt in just a moment. We have a place for you to store any documents that are relevant to this project. Actions, issues, risks, we'll talk about it just a bit later. We do allow for cost management if you wish. Again, you don't have to have that. Let's just say cost is not something you're interested in detailing for a certain number of your projects. That could be hidden as well. You would be talking with your customer success partner for how to get certain elements hidden. We have communications, which is a way to create different types of communications. Appointments, you can create real calendar appointments here. It interacts with Outlook. You can send real emails and track them within here as well. You can log a phone call. You can create sort of standard notes, or you can create fancier OneNotes. This is one of the integrations that we have is OneNote integration. Very easy just to click in there. And then we have project setting, which is really mostly administrative type things, although there are a couple of things that we'll look at today, including the baselining is something in here that we'll be looking at, as well as this approvals tab in due time. Okay, let's go back to the Gantt. So for mastering task management, it really all begins, of course, with recruiting your team. Right? So you recruit your team, might require some horse trading, so to speak, with other members of your organization to get the right team members attached to your project. Then possibly before you even start clicking in here, depending on how you work, you may want to create a work breakdown structure. You could do it with post-its on a board. You could do it in Visio, spreadsheet, mind mapping software. In this case, I'm just using Microsoft Word. You'd have your various headings, project summary tasks, stages, phases, whatever you want to call it for your project. You can see here, I'm considering the top levels to be stages. And this translates into the product. I'll show you how you can literally create a task that is of a stage type in just a little bit. We have your standard tasks. We also have a special kind of task, which would be called a deliverable. So in this case, underneath the development stage, one of the important tasks to get done is to document requirements for this particular project. And that would be a deliverable type. It's deliverable type because we're going to want to attach a document to this task, and the way that we implement that is by making the task of a deliverable type, and that allows us to attach documents. And so forth, so on and so forth. We've got another stage here. And again, through brainstorming with your team, you'll come up with your work breakdown structure. You'll come up with estimates as well. So very important to get those duration estimates from the team member themselves. You know, it's not something that a project manager would want to do in isolation, although that might be more expeditious. Of course, you're going to want to get the people responsible for doing the work to give you their assessment. Most of the time we're talking in duration. You might choose to do work effort, which is hours as well. But for this product purposes, we're going to be talking about duration. So let's go back to the Gantt. Let's see how this translates into the product itself. Let me just do that. So you can see here, we're back in the actual project. And you can see we took a work breakdown structure and put it right here into the Gantt. The Gantt has two sections. It has a grid section with a lot of information here. We can make changes right there in the grid, and that all translates over into a Gantt screen. Think of that as kind of like a horizontal calendar view of each individual task. You can see that the way that I built this particular task list is I have a very top level project summary task here. So all of the child tasks that you see below will roll up into this top level here. So if these guys had some percentage completions in there, it would figure out through a calculation of duration and the individual percentage completes of these tasks what the overall project summary percent complete is. That would roll up into the top level. It also would extend the bar out to wherever that final task is. So that's just a nice little tip. You can organize your task list like that. Then we have the next level, which is what we were looking at in the work breakdown structure. So this happens to be a stage. I know when we created this task, we made it a stage just by, had I clicked on add new, we would get a window like this. And among other things, you can set the task type here. So you can see I could have made it a deliverable or a task, which I mentioned earlier. In this case, it is going to be a stage. It is going to be a parent to a group of tasks underneath. Underneath that, we do have a regular task. Just to show you that, I go into task details, and you can see that's of a task type task. And there are also deliverables, as you saw in the Word outline. Here's a deliverable. And as you could probably guess, if I clicked in here and went into task details, that is a deliverable. And again, that just gives us the ability, well, first of all, it's good to identify it as a deliverable type task generally, but it also gives us the ability to attach documents to that particular task. We'll just cancel out of there. So we would enter in all of those tasks there. Very easy to move into indent or outdent to create the hierarchy that we need to create. We can create dependencies among the tasks, as you see here. So if you have your standard waterfall type of a schedule where one task leads to the next, that next task leads to the next one in that sort of a linear order, you can represent that here in the project as well. It's just as easy as grabbing onto, let me see if I have a sample down here. Well, we would just grab onto one of those circles there and just drag it onto depending on the type of dependency you're creating, but if it's a finish to start dependency, we just grab onto that circle and drag it onto the leftmost circle of the next task. And all of that is figured into the calculations for what is the current start date, what is the current finish date. We also have the ability to do a baseline. Once we decide that our tasks are good to lock and load, Everything looks good. We can come in and do the baseline. Now, before we do the baseline, however, a best practice would be to do some risk planning with your team. Not every organization is ready to do risk planning with every project, but it is something to kind of keep in your back pocket for when you are ready. It's a good idea to do. We do have a risk module for that. The reason why I'm mentioning we do that before we baseline is because not every task may have been thought through entirely when we were doing the brainstorming for the WBS. It's kind of, it could even be considered fun in a way to kind of sit around a table with your team and brainstorm for what could possibly go wrong with this project to make our duration estimates incorrect, or to maybe identify a task or two or 10 that need to be added to our Gantt to account for some sort of a risk. So let's just click in here. You could see here's a one risk that was already identified: production equipment may malfunction. Now, these don't usually come from out of nowhere. It would usually be because somebody, either the project manager or one of your team members, was on a similar project where he or she saw this particular issue come up when it was not expected. So through the risk planning, you kind of jog the memory, you know, and you kind of shake these things out, and somebody on your team says, hey, you know what? I remember on project ABC, we had a lot of production equipment failures, and that extended the timeline by 2 or 3 months. You know, so that's just an example how after coming up with that risk, you'd probably want to go back to your Gantt and add some sort of a task that accounts for that. Either purchase sufficient warranty, or maybe somehow schedule some on-site technicians to be available, you know, during critical stages of the project. If we want to create a new one, just click on New Risk over here. It opens up a short form to begin, just to kind of get, there are many more fields that are available, but we just kind of want to give you a quick way to enter in the most important information about the risk, and maybe the project manager goes in later and fills in some of the details. Let's just look at some of the other details here. So there's some additional columns or fields that are exposed once you're done with the quick entry. The other way, well, so that's the risk planning aspect, and you would assign somebody who is going to keep an eye on this risk during the execution of the project. Somebody who's responsible for determining if the risk has already passed, it didn't come to be, and it won't come to be because those particular tasks that are related to this already passed. Or they might actually notice that the risk has occurred. And in that case, you would be creating an actual issue. But we'll get into that in just a bit. So after all that's done, you're comfortable with your Gantt, you can then come in and do a baseline of it. Now this baseline here, this is what you would click to see the baseline after it has been set. To set it, the project manager would come into the project settings tab. I should point out that not everybody has access to this project settings tab. It is something that is security trimmed. So those who do have access can come in here. They can make changes to other aspects of project settings, but what we're referring to right now is this one here: reset target dates in all project tasks, otherwise known as baselining that Gantt. We feel comfortable enough about it. We're going to click yes. We're going to click, well, it's already been saved. We're going to come back to the Gantt tab. May need to refresh this guy a bit. Let's just give it a little time. I'll refresh my screen here. And there we go. So you can see underneath, there's like a little automation that's running, so I just needed to give it a second or two longer, but it has run. And this will show you with an orange bar underneath what the planned start and finish dates are for all of these tasks here. If it slips, if we have to come in later and actually extend out a task or many tasks, as is known to happen. Then when we clicked on baseline, you would see the orange bar would represent what was originally planned, but you would see the task actually moved out beyond, usually beyond the orange bar, because it's been lengthened. But of course, if we get lucky and the task is shortened, the orange bar would extend beyond the task. But really, how often does that happen? It's a good way for people to see slippage. There are other ways to see slippage. If we click on the status tab here, you can see just through dates, you can see if there's slippage. So the target finish for this project was September 21. So that's when it was originally baselined. But the actual current finish, you can see there was slippage, is extended out about a month. So that's baselining in there. Now, going on to the actual execution so the execution portion of task management. So you've got this locked in. The kickoff has begun. Initiation is underway. You're actually into the execution stage of the project. So you have your folks observing and keeping an eye on the risks, right? Making sure that none of them have actually occurred. If they did occur, another aspect of task management, of course, is issue management. In fact, I'm sure there are probably many project managers who consider project management to be more issue management. The project management piece at times could be the easy part, actually planning things out and working around other aspects, but issue management can be a tough one. That's the one that extends costs or schedule or quality. And of course, we do have a way to manage that. So either the risk occurred and became an issue, or something that wasn't even thought of happened, that's going to affect either the schedule, the quality of the end product, or other aspects of the project. So of course, we have an existing issue here. To create a new one, we would just click on new issue. And just like we saw with risks, it starts with a quick form. Again, we're all about letting you manage projects as quickly as possible. You get the issue in. One of the most important fields would be who are you assigning it to. That, just like anything else that you're seeing within the project, gets put onto the work list of that person, so that when they go into a My Work view or some other work report or resource utilization dashboard, all these little pieces of work are going to be accounted for. Very hard for things to slip through the cracks. And just like you saw with risks, if we wanted to see the full breadth excuse me, of the issue, we can click into it and see all the other fields that are available. You can even give a resolution rating at the end after it's been resolved. Moving on to another very important aspect of task management is the whole process that we built in, the whole mechanism that we built in to be able to go from one stage or phase of the project to the next. So this what I'm about to say kind of depends on how formal you make your task management. There might be some projects where it's extremely formal, where the project manager cannot kick off the next stage of the project with the team members until some sort of manager or some other stakeholder approves. In this case, for example, approves that the business case steps or tasks have been done correctly, and then they give the go-ahead, and then the project manager can go on to the next stage. Or you might choose to be much more informal, and maybe the project manager does not need that kind of approval. They can just manage it themselves and go from one stage to the next. This is all controlled, whether you take the formal or informal approach, through this approvals tab. So in this approvals tab, first of all, we have an approvals coordinator. So in this case, Anne is somebody who's kind of managing that whole approval process to go from one stage to the next. She's not making the approval decisions, but she's going to be copied on all the automated communications that are going out. She's going to be alerted if there's sort of a stall in the process. So a very important piece of the approval process. However, we have other stakeholders. So you can see out of the box here, we're saying for this particular template type or project, we're not going to enforce any approval system. It's going to be entirely up to the project manager. But if we wanted to, we could just say, you know what, to go from business case to development, we do want some approval. Now we could put the approver's name in there. We can add some additional email text, like, well, it already has some email text in there, but we could add something additional for this particular project if we wish. So what happens then is everybody gets, when the business case has been completed, when all the tasks in that business case stage have been completed, in this case, the project the stage would go out for approval, people would be alerted, project gets frozen temporarily, approval is received, hopefully, and then it opens up that you can now go into the Gantt and take care of all those development type tasks that are in there. Just go back there. And you can see we could choose to turn it on and off for all or just for some of the stages that you see at the top. And you can see that what we did in this case is we matched our stage names in the Gantt to what you see across the top. This we call the business process flow. So we match our stages to the business process flow. We go into approvals if we want to have some sort of a gating process to get from one to the next. The email, one of the emails, there are many automated emails that go out related to approvals. Let me just show you one example here. So you can see here that in this case, the project manager is trying to get the project to go from business case to development. So business case, they think is totally good to go and done, all those tasks, but they do need approval in this case in order to get into the development phase. So the approvals coordinator, in this case it's me, but when I showed you before, you had Anne as the approvals coordinator. So this is one of the emails I was saying that it keeps her in the loop or whoever is the approvals coordinator in the loop for everything that's going on regarding approvals. So in this case, I'm notified about everything that you see here. We're trying to get into this development stage and we're waiting on Dan Bacon to give approval to move on to the next stage. Dan would get his own email, which has some buttons in there that says approve or decline or whatever, it has, or maybe some other wording that you wanted in there. And once he takes care of all that, everybody gets notified that you're good to go into the next stage. You could have multiple approvers, by the way. In this case, it's just one, but you could have multiple approvers. And it's a nice system where, it's not going to let them get to the next stage until all the approvals have been received. So projects moving along, let's say in the middle of the project, you decide that, you know what, we built this project based on one particular starter template type, but it came to pass that maybe this project has a kind of different feel to it and we might want to have different stages involved. So probably doesn't happen very often, but just to let you know that there is some flexibility with changing project templates. So this particular project was created using, let's see which one, using the new product idea starter template. And it comes with these tabs across the top and this business process flow. But these elements, if necessary, could be changed later on. So there is some flexibility. Again, that's going to become apparent through your task management and how things play out. Now, as you're proceeding through the project and you're managing your tasks, it may, or probably it's likely, that you may have to re-baseline. Like I mentioned before, tasks may start slipping, or your team might tell you that some future task is definitely going to slip. So in that case, you're basically figuring that you really can't keep the original baseline. You're going to have to do a new baseline, of course, after notifying all your stakeholders, so that you don't forever see the orange baseline, for example, being shorter than the current task. You might want to do a new baseline so that you can see further changes that might happen down the line. Now, before you go ahead and do a new baseline, which we do allow you to do, what you're probably going to want to do is get approval, right? So you could do that through whatever means you want. It might be phone calls, it might be some sort of a weekly meeting to get approval to do a rebaseline from your stakeholders. You could also avail yourself of our actions module here. So we have an actions module. It's for work that's not like a formal task. These are for things that don't belong in the Gantt list or chart, and they're not a risk, they're not an issue. It's just some sort of action that you want to assign to somebody. Various types of actions that you can assign to the person. One is just sort of a generic action if you wish, but the other one could be either a change. You can this bit about having to change the baseline. You can decide if that's just a decision or maybe it's a change related to a change request. In this case, I'm going to say it's a decision. You can give the decision a name, rebaseline the project. The action requested is to get approval to rebaseline the project. You would assign it to whichever stakeholder is responsible for those kind of decisions. You might want to make that a high priority if it sort of requires that. And you'd want to give a due date, of course, because the project's moving along in whatever late state it is, regardless of whether or not the decision is made. But it's another great way for actions or tasks or work to not fall through the cracks. And again, that becomes part of that particular person's work list so that they don't forget it. Finally, we're just going to talk about closing the project. So, of course, you'd want to probably get some sort of sign-offs, to be able to close the project. So that might be you may choose to have an approval required to go from launch to standard product, or in some of our other template types, it just might be called something like close project. So you might want to get formal approval that's documented through the automatic emails and through an approval system that's built into the product. You also might want to create a lessons learned document, right? So you could just go into your documents here, and you can click on new, and you can make that a Word document if you wish, or a OneNote, have your lessons learned in there. The other thing you might want to do is create what we call a content template. I'm going to go kind of quickly through this because I'm looking at the time, but it's a really neat thing that we offer. So let's say we built out this task list and it's worked out fabulously for us, and the next time a project like this comes along, we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel and type in every task again, or maybe we want to let our colleagues have a head start, the next time that they're going to be managing a project similar to this. So what you can do very easily is you would make sure your task list looks the way that you'd like it to be. You might even have some issues and risks that are populated that you would like to be part of a future template for future usage as well. So you kind of check those things out. You come into project settings, and with just a click, with the click of a button and maybe another click or two down the line, it's very easy to create what we call a content template. So you can see here, copy to new content template. I would click yes. It would take all of that content, all of that data, take the task list information. It would take any issues or risks that are part of this project. It would put it into this thing called a content template. And the next time somebody creates a similar project, they can choose to use a regular template that's attached to that content template and have basically have that huge head start when managing their project. And again, it's a larger discussion about all the really cool things you can do with content templates. I did want to make you aware of that feature. With that, Mihal, I am going to hand it back over to you.
That's great stuff, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Okay. So what we're going to do next, folks, is we're going to open up the questions if anybody has any. So if you do have any questions, please do add it into the questions panel in GoToWebinar, which you might need to expand out. Just to reiterate as well the fact that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar to everybody who registered tomorrow, and it'll come from our colleague Adam. We'll also give you Adam's details as well if you have any kind of follow-up questions. He would be the best place to start with. So again, just add your questions to the panel. Uh, First question, Jonathan, is from Sean, who wants to know, how is the priority decided? So he asked us pretty early on in the demonstration. Maybe you got to it in the meantime.
Um, the the priority of the projects, right? Well, during the request process, there are ways to sort of indicate during the request process when you're going to get approval whether or not this would be a higher priority project or a lower one. So you could characterize the project so that when folks are getting requests to approve projects to be created, they would be alerted to the fact that this is a higher priority project. For example, that's one way that you can do it. You can also let me just see if I could quickly. Yeah, no, I'm not. Oh, yeah. Well, in the project itself, there is a field called priority, which can be set to a high priority also. And then through the different reports, or maybe through the different views in the system, you can do a sorting by whatever value you put in for the priority.
Sure, that makes sense. Vicky wants to know, could you color code the critical path?
Oh, yeah, great question. Not in this particular version of the product, but it is on our roadmap, and we do expect or plan at least for that to be implemented. So it's actually very high on our roadmap for a near future product release.
Nice. So nobody wants to know, if we wanted to use this for matter/deal work, what are the information governance protocols in place? Huh.
I think maybe we're talking about like sort of from an infrastructure perspective.
I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
Zenobia can add further context to that.
Right. Well, just in case I'm sort of on the right track, there are government versions of Microsoft 365, and we are compatible with those government authorized versions, so that's one thing that I would throw out there. For further information, I think that would be a great follow-up question with either with Adam or one of Adam's colleagues.
Yeah, so I think that might be better answered in a private kind of demo. She said that we have clients who just want to know what is going on, and we need to be able to answer them from a privacy perspective. I get you. Okay. Okay. Sean, as a follow-up on the priority, can you set it up to have question answers be weighted and give a prioritization score?
Yeah, great question. We don't have that out of the box. I would say we've done interesting things through. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to answer this more on a generic level. That part of when you purchase the product, you're also purchasing service hours. Now that particular thing is not built, that particular specific thing is not built into the product, but part of the service hours is assuming some customization of the product. I mean, we have customers using things strictly out of the box, but many customers who have made use of the customization aspect of the services that we provide. So I would say something to discuss through, it would be done through requirements gathering with your customer success partner. We have developers, and potentially something that could be worked in there, but it's not out of the box.
It's a good opportunity to talk about that too, Jonathan. And it's kind of what you referred to earlier in your slides with the start evolve. So I guess, in such a short demonstration, we can only really cover how users might start, but there's so much they could do with their customer success partner as they evolve and, get a little bit more complex. But that is definitely available.
Yeah, exactly. What you're seeing is out of the box, but again, many customers choose to do some very interesting things through some customization work.
Sure. Let me just go back and see what else we have. I have a question here from Jill. That's do approvers have to be BrightWork licensed users? So maybe we can cover that broadly.
So yes, they do. Generally, if somebody, at least currently, generally if somebody is going to be chosen to be assigned a work, or I consider that sort of like a piece of work, they would be licensed. I will point out in terms of the folks that do not need, well, I would say the folks that could use what we call a free license would be those who are only putting in requests for new projects. So if you're a paid license organization for BrightWork, but you also have a bunch of users who strictly want to put in project requests, they can use a free license. So I guess the direct answer to your question was no, but we do have aspects of free license elsewhere in the system.
That's helpful, yeah, and that kind of covers a couple of people's questions there. There's one or two questions as well about kind of pricing and licensing. We have a good web page on our website about pricing, which is kind of the best place to start. I can share that in the chat. There's one or two questions in there about the kind of tiers and the licensing. And I see Philippe, you have a question about nonprofits as well. That'd be kind of the best. Adam would be the best person to start with that. So I'll ask Adam to kind of reach out to you too on that, if that's okay. One or two last questions. Let's have a look. Jason wants to know, is there any help migration to the tool from another PM tool? I can probably jump in there and say not specifically, Jonathan, but it would be something that the customer success partner could probably assist with.
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to start the answer. There is flexibility to the services piece, of the purchase. Yeah, so that would be a great thing to kind of discuss. But it's not like there's a button to click, that sort of works with
that just migrates it
integration.
Over.
Yeah, it would be more of a bespoke, of a custom. It might be a manual system. Not sure, it all depends on the specifics.
I gotcha. Folks, I'm just going to put that pricing page into the chat if it's something that you're interested in. Let's just kind of finish up here. Is all the data stored within the user's Office 365 environment? That's a great question.
Yes, it is. So the data is all stored within your organization's Microsoft 365 tenant. And that includes, I mentioned how you can add documents, of course, to projects, to programs, to portfolios. All of that is it's stored on SharePoint Online, but it would be your SharePoint Online.
Yeah, and there's a sense of security in that too. Let me finish. Oh yeah, we've one kind of final question here that Amber wants to know: do we have to use the Gantt, or can we use Microsoft Project? So unfortunately not, I'm going to say on that one, Jonathan.
Yeah, great question, but that's correct. We're building in more and more functionality, into our Gantt, so hopefully it sort of accounts for at least many of the use cases that Project would satisfy. Sure. But it's not, it's not integrated with Microsoft Project.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that's as good a time as any. We told people we'd keep them for 45 minutes and we've kept them for an extra 5. So apologies, folks, but hopefully it was worth the extra 5 minutes to have a quick chat about what we saw. I want to thank everybody for joining us again today. If you do have further follow-up questions, or I know there's a couple of detailed questions in there, which is, it's obvious and it makes sense. So if you do want a custom demo, that's something that we can organize really easily for you. And the best person to talk to about that would be our colleague, Adam. So his contact details are here up on the screen, but also keep an eye out for an email from him tomorrow, because he'll be the one sharing on the recording if you want to share with any of your colleagues. And we'll also share any of the slides that we used today with a little bit of information about BrightWork 365. But again, folks, thank you for joining us. And I also want to thank Jonathan for taking the time to show us that demonstration today and answer all our questions. It's very much appreciated, Jonathan.
You're very welcome, and glad everybody could join.
Thank you very much, folks. Hopefully we'll be talking to you very soon, but have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Thank you.
Goodbye.